Let's see. We've looked at making shapes, but we've also understood now that you can take simple shapes like circles and squares and make more complicated objects out of them, and we're not done doing that, I want to tell you. We've looked at fills, albeit they were just solid colors, and we've looked at strokes. Let's go back to fills, but let's work with gradients. Let's talk a little bit about how you can make gradients in this program. And I've got a new document open. Go ahead and open up a blank thing. And let's go ahead and draw a couple of shapes. So I'm going to, I don't know, pick up my rectangle tool, and I'll give myself a rectangle down here. I'll pick up the star tool, and I'll draw a simple yet functional star. And I'll pick up my line segment tool and draw me a line segment. And I'm going to stroke here, and I'm going to give that a little bit more thickness, like about 4 points. There you go. Now let's go back to our selection tool, and let's select here, and let's give that a color and this a fill color. So when you do that, you want to make sure, of course, that you have this selected over here. Okay, so I got a star, a rectangle, and a line. We're ready to go. If you come over here, you might notice something. This is the last fill color you used. This is the last gradient you used. And that's turn it off, whatever it is. Let's go actually into the swatches. We got room over here. And let's move this up here, and let's move this down. About like that. You do have some default gradients. So let me select the star and click, say, this one right here. And you get a standard run-of-the-mill, white on the left, black on the right, linear gradient. Now let's go into our gradient panel right here. We got the room. Let's bring it out. It shows you here that it's linear. You can do linear or you can do radial. It's up to you. Let's leave it at linear for now. This button right here will give you some others that Adobe has, but I'll tell you, the most fun ones are probably going to be the ones you do yourself, but you could play around with those if you want to. This button down here allows you to change the gradient on the stroke or the fill. You can put gradients on strokes. And this one reverses the gradient. This one's the angle. We're on linear right now, so that's all we have up here for an option. This right here allows me to control where the colors are, add colors, or change what the colors exactly are by using these sliders. Okay. Now, if we get them really close together, we don't really have much of a gradient, but it could be for an effect. Let me pull those back again. You do have another tool if you choose to use it, and it's right over here. And watch what happens when I click it. You get that bar. Now, on that bar, if you touch it, there are your colors. You can actually do most of what we're doing over here right here if you choose to use that tool. Let's go back to our regular one up here. And let me pull that back this way. Now you will notice you have an opacity and a location button down here. Let's change this to a radial. Now in radial, one of the options that now comes up is this one right here, and it's aspect ratio. So if I go into, say, 30%, watch. Well, it changes it from a circle into more of an elongated shape. It's up to you. And we can change that all day long. Let's take that back to 100%. Okay, so you can change the aspect ratio in a radial. Opacity I like. Let's skip that one for a second. I don't want white and black. I want blue and yellow. I want something else. There are two ways that you can get a color over here. Number one, if I grab it from up here and drag it down, I can change it. The easier way, in my opinion, is if you select that color slider and then come up here and hold the Alt key down. That's the Option key on a Mac and the Alt key in Windows, and you can then change it just by clicking. To me, that's an easier way to experiment. Just hold that Alt key down and you got it. Let's go to something a little bit different. How about that? Okay, let's stop there. If you want to add a color, that's easy too. Come over here and grab one. Let's do this one. And pull it down on here until you see a plus sign. And you can add, well, just about as many as you've got room here. If you don't want it anymore, you can drag it off. And now we're back to our original 2. You have to have at least 2 to have a gradient. I like opacity. Opacity is not new. Relatively speaking, it is. It hasn't been there forever. but it allows me to take a fill color on a gradient, or actually if it's just a straight fill too, and make it transparent. So if I pick up this one right here and grab opacity, and let's take it to 0. Now it looks white, it's transparent. If I come over here and move this over here, check this out. Look at that. You know what that's good for? You can make the coolest vignettes around an image by using a gradient with one of the colors as transparent, and you look through, you drop that on top of something else, and you have this really cool soft vignette. Opacity, that's a pretty neat one. Now I mentioned that we can apply these to a stroke. So if I come over here and select this guy right here, and go into the stroke button right here, if I click an option like here, it literally puts that gradient on that stroke. You can have a lot of fun with gradients. They're not just about mixing one color into another. To me, with the opacity setting that we have now, it changes everything about gradients. Where I used to go into Photoshop to create my vignettes for images, I can now do a lot of that work in Adobe Illustrator with Vector because of the ability to change opacity. So we're just getting started with gradients. We're just playing around here. But gradients are one more way for us to work. Now let's say, for the sake of argument, that we like what we did here and we want to save that. Well, we come over here and drag it, just like any other color, over here. And there you go. You want to use it over and over again, just click the button. Gradients can get very complicated, and there are other tools to do gradients in Illustrator that we'll explore later, like the mesh tool. That's a pretty fun one too. But they've been there for a long time, but the newer feature, which I like, not really new, but one of the newer features I like is opacity. I think that really, really does a great job.